When you hear the word autism, what is the first image that flashes into your mind? For many people, it is a very specific type of person. Maybe you see a brilliant scientist who struggles to make eye contact. Maybe you see a young boy who is obsessed with trains and sits alone. These images are like postcards from a place we have never actually visited. We have been taught to see this way by movies and social media. We have been taught to look for a certain kind of behavior to decide who is autistic and who is not. But imagine for a moment that you are a young girl who feels like an alien that just crash-landed on a strange planet. You watch the other kids talk and laugh and it looks as easy as breathing to them, but for you it feels like a complex puzzle you cannot solve. You find more comfort in snails and birds than in your classmates. You wait years to find out why you feel this way, and when you finally get an answer, the world tells you that your brain is broken. This is the reality for millions of people who live outside the tiny box of what society calls normal. We are told to fit in, to behave, and to be like everyone else long before we even know who we really are. It is time we look past the screen and the stereotypes to see the true spectrum of human experience. The surface concept we often use to talk about autism is based on a line. We imagine a straight line where one end is a little bit autistic and the other end is very autistic. This is where we get the terms high functioning and low functioning. On the surface, these labels seem helpful. They seem to tell us how much help a person needs. When we see someone who can speak well, have a successful career, and stand on a stage, we call them high functioning. We see them as a success story because they look and act a lot like us. When we see someone who cannot speak or who needs a full-time caretaker, we call them low functioning. The surface idea is that some people are closer to being normal than others. We use these labels to simplify something that is actually very complex. We think we are being kind or practical by categorizing people this way, but we are really just looking at the surface of a deep ocean. We are judging a book by how well it fits on a standard shelf rather than by the story inside. This leads us to a hidden assumption that is much darker than it appears. The hidden assumption behind these labels is that a person's value is tied to their economic output. When we say someone is high functioning, what we are really asking is how well can this person work in a factory or an office. We are asking if they can be a productive part of a capitalistic machine. If an autistic person can produce value or make money, they are seen as worthy of a place in society. If they cannot produce that value because their support needs are higher, we label them as less than. This hidden assumption suggests that our human worth is based on what we do rather than who we are. It assumes that being normal is the goal and anything else is a failure. This is why many autistic people feel they have to mask their true selves to survive. They try to hide their struggles to remain palatable to the world. We assume that if we cannot see the struggle, it does not exist. But the reality is that functioning is not a fixed state. A person who is brilliant and vocal today might be unable to dress themselves tomorrow due to sensory overload. The hidden assumption of a fixed label fails to capture the fluid reality of a living, breathing person. This brings us to a structural pattern that exists across all of society. This pattern is the push for sameness. From the moment we enter school, the system is built to reward those who can sit still, follow rules, and communicate in a specific way. The structure of our world is designed for a very narrow type of brain. Because of this, anyone who falls outside that structure is seen as a problem to be fixed rather than a person to be understood. We see this in the media, where representation is still incredibly rare. Until very recently, almost all autistic characters were played by people who were not autistic. This created a cycle where the public only saw a fake version of the condition. Structurally, this keeps autistic voices at the bottom of the ladder. They are talked about but rarely talked to. Even when we get a character who is authentic, they are often chosen because they are quirky or cute. They fit into a specific structural niche that makes the rest of the world feel comfortable. This pattern of exclusion means that many people, especially women and people of color, go undiagnosed for decades. In the United States, for example, research shows that white children are often diagnosed with autism at higher rates and earlier ages than Black or Hispanic children. Data from the CDC suggests that while the gap is closing, Black children are still more likely to be identified with intellectual disability alongside autism compared to white children. This shows a structural bias in how we perceive and label different brains based on race and social standing. We must reframe our entire perspective by throwing away the linear scale. Instead of a straight line, imagine a color wheel. This is the hex code of autism. Just as a color is made of many different values of light, autism is made of many different traits. One person might have high sensory sensitivity but great social skills. Another might be nonverbal but have an incredible memory for patterns. No color is better or worse than another. A deep blue is not a broken version of a bright yellow. They are simply different. When we reframe autism as a color wheel, we stop asking how autistic someone is and start asking what they need to thrive. We stop trying to cure a person and start trying to change the environment around them. This perspective allows us to see that everyone has a hex code. We all have things we are good at and things we struggle with. By seeing autism as a natural variation of the human species, we move from a place of fear to a place of acceptance. We no longer see a broken brain but a different way of experiencing the world. To apply this to daily life, we must start by listening. We have to stop talking over the people we are trying to help. If you are not autistic, your job is to be a sidekick. This means using your own voice and your own privilege to make space for others. It means sharing stories from actual autistic creators and advocates. In the workplace, it means realizing that the top experts in almost every field are often on the spectrum, even if they do not say it out loud. We can apply this by making our environments more accessible for everyone. Small changes like lower lights or clearer instructions can help everyone, not just those with a diagnosis. We should stop using the phrase "everyone is a little bit autistic" because it dismisses the very real struggles that come with the identity. Instead, we should acknowledge that while we all have struggles, the autistic experience is unique and valid. We can apply this in our families by teaching children that being different is not a curse. We can show them that diversity in how we think is just as important as diversity in how we look. When we stop trying to force people into a box of normality, we allow them to finally breathe. It is also helpful to look at the numbers to understand the scale of this reality. Around 1 in 36 children in the United States are diagnosed with autism, according to recent reports. This is a significant portion of our population. If we look at employment, the statistics are even more striking. Some estimates suggest that up to 85% of autistic adults with a college education are unemployed or underemployed. This is a massive failure of our societal structure. We are losing out on incredible talent because we refuse to adapt our workplaces to different hex codes of thinking. This is not just a social issue, it is a loss of potential for all of humankind. We have created a world where people are afraid to be themselves because they might lose their friends or their jobs. We have to ask ourselves why we are so attached to a definition of normal that excludes so many brilliant minds. When we see an autistic person playing an autistic role on television, it should not be a history-making event. It should be the expectation. Representation is only the first step. The goal is a world where no one has to be an advocate just to exist. We want a world where being autistic is as normal as having blue eyes or being left-handed. We want a world where people are valued for their humanity, not their productivity. This requires us to be brave and to challenge the systems that tell us to be ashamed of our differences. We need to see autistic people in every part of life, as doctors, as teachers, as politicians, and as neighbors. When we see the full hex code of humanity, we all become a little more free. We are tired of the firsts and the history makers. We are ready for the time when people can simply be who they are without a label of high or low holding them back. If you realize that the world around you was built for only one type of brain, but the people you love have a million different ways of thinking, would you continue to support the walls of that box, or would you help us tear them down so everyone can see the light?